became human,
Right.
discovered all of the natural human sins, and
Right.
died within a week.
Yeah. And like these that's what I'm saying when I'm thinking like these are human stories that I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't feel like I see enough of these, right? Like I understand people want to go back to like, you know, Encounter at Farpoint. Sorry, we're having a Star Trek discussion to start things off, right? But it's the first episode of the Next Generation, and Picard is straight up. How long do I gotta wait? Is it 30 seconds or a minute?
I don't
So
remember. I think 30
he's
seconds.
he's
Whatever.
got a rod shoved all the way up from his butt to his brainstem, right? And he is not nice to Will for at least the first half of that episode, right? And so that is Star Trek to a lot of people, right? You know, it's like we're being serious and we're exploring, and I'm with it, right? I 100% hate the more lackadaisical bridges that you see sometimes in some of the more modern things, right? It still is a paramilitary organization. There is still is some discipline. However, I feel like people lose sight of the fact that these guys are still people. And that's been an argument since like the DS9 days, right? And so, like, just because you're part of all of this thing doesn't mean that you're not still motivated by your biology in some way. For the record, in case you guys start getting weirded out, I was talking about the likelihood of there being a fat Jem'Hadar because he got off of Ketracel White and started eating, and he doesn't know how to stop himself because all the food is so delicious. So it's just like, where's that story in Star Trek? And if you steal it, I'm coming for you because that one's mine. It's got my fingerprints all over it, my greasy, sticky boy fingerprints. So
Yeah. You can see them in the Dorito dust.
I had a Dorito in so long, but I'll touche anyway. So, but we should get on to Dresden though. So,
Yeah, yeah. Different stories we're talking about here. Different. The exercise of adapting this book, Small Favor, into a TV show. Different brain avenue.
right. And yeah, this is why we have a whole other podcast, is what I was going to say, right? This is why we have while we weren't recording, because we have these conversations and sometimes we're just like, but why did we stop? You know, that was silly. So, all right. Dresden Files, Small Favor, Part 4, we're pretty sure because we're starting on chapter 30. We got to the end of chapter 29. It was just too perfect with the way that the episode lined up and what's happening in the book that we just stopped there. But basically, Dresden is had his little chat with Nicodemus at the Shed Aquarium, realized that it's a trap, wheels within wheels, you know, and that they're going to kidnap Kincaid, or not. Jesus, they're going to kidnap Ivy. I think I read Kincaid. That's what I'm going to blame. They're going to
Kin
kidnap
Cap
Ivy
was a
because
pretty good Freudian
yes,
slip in some way.
yeah, yeah.
That's what
So
Kincaid calls it when he kills someone. It's a kin cap.
yeah, you've been kidnapped. Great. We're gonna put that in the show somewhere, and then we're gonna be like, why? Why is this suddenly a '90s buddy cop flick? You know. So yeah.
Oh yeah,
All
to
right.
do a story of Murphy in Hawaii with Kincaid, and he does some cheesy kin
You've been
cap thing, and she's
kidnapped.
like, "No, I went on a vacation with
Yeah.
Kincaid, not Dresden. What the?"
Yeah. Well, it's even better because like the whole time she's like freaking boys, and then she's like, you know, I'm still gonna hit that. It's fine. So you know,
She has a type,
it's-
which is
she's
really dangerous and
very
very cheesy.
yeah, she's very into Kincaid, as we will see hopefully today. So all right, so Dresden starts thinking about, if I was Ivy and Kincaid, what would I do? And what are the Denarians doing to counter that and all of this stuff? So, obviously, plan A is I would retreat into the Never Never. And I think there's some acknowledgement that, you know, this place probably was even specifically picked for that or something along those lines, you know, was like access to and from the Never Never. So obviously the spell used against Marcone was a dry run on a bear trap to capture Ivy, right? So Dresden needs to get inside it because it's coming, because he can feel the energy build up after he just knocked Nicodemus through multiple support pillars in the entry hall, you know, that sort of thing. So now from the book, if I didn't go in though, it would be just Ivy and Kincaid against all of them. In a deadly business, Kincaid was one of the deadliest at the top of the field for centuries, but there was only one of him. Ivy had vast knowledge to draw upon, but of course, once she was cut off and expended, sorry, I'm zooming in here. So expended whatever magic she had immediately available to her, the only thing she'd be able to do with all that knowledge would be to calculate her worsening odds of escape. So I think so this is where my note was, is like Dresden said for centuries, right? So we had that little conversation about Ebenezer told him, I've been working alongside him one way or another for centuries. So Kincaid very much not human, despite
Mhm.
appearances. So I guess in the end, it came down to a single question, whether or not I was the kind of man who walks away when he knows a little kid is in danger. And we know
Mhm.
that he isn't. So fuck. you know. So Dresden's running back to the Oceanarium where he assumes all of this is going to take place, and I think he does some little calculations of like knowing where the circle's going to close, more or less, right? As he's running, he's taking in more power than he's ever managed ever before, and he starts feeling it fill him up and feeling like he's going to start flying apart, and only then does he like, oh, okay, I might have enough now, So, it didn't occur to me during reading, but saying it out loud, like he's probably like halfway or more on his way to a death curse, right? Because this would be very similar to what a death curse would be like, where it's just like you're taking all the available power, probably only what's in your body, but you're taking all of it, and you're going to unleash it. But in this case, we're going to like, yeah, we're taking all of it, but we're going to try and like let it out this much at a time.
Yeah, it's
Try.
like if
It's
you
Dresden.
breathe in and hold your breath for as long as possible, but, like, he has to keep moving around and using lungs.
Right. And then as a bonus, static electricity crackled with every single motion of my limbs, bright green and painfully sharp until it sounded like it was running across a field of bubble wrap,
Green,
which is
huh?
going to be fucking hilarious because, like we got to portray that. So just to hear Dresden like as he runs, and so, but I pounded through the entry of the Oceanarium, felt a shivering sensation as I ran right through a veil I had not sensed was there, and all but barreled into a demonic figure crouched down on the floor. I skidded to a stop, and there was an instant of surprise as we stared at each other. The Denarian was basically humanoid, as most of them were, a gaunt, even skeletal gray skinned figure. Spurs of bone jutted out from every joint, slightly curved and wickedly pointed. Greasy, lanky hair hung from his knobby skull to its skinny shoulders, and its two pair of eyes, one very human brown and one glowing demonic green, were both wide and staring in shock. Which it's like, if you startle the actual angel, you did a good job.
Yeah.
Um, it was crouched amidst the preparations of a spell of some kind, a candle, a chalk circle on the floor, a cup made from a skull and filled with water, and it wore a heavy canvas messenger bag slung across one shoulder. One hand was still down in the bag as if it had been in the midst of drawing something out of it when I'd come charging up. So Dresden kicks him in the face. He breaks the spell he was working on. He knocks the skull goblet into the tank. And then he unleashes a much too powerful Fozari, but the demon just eats his spell. Because Dresden doesn't know this, but he's now met Thorn and Namshiel, which is one of the like two or three
Mhm.
like sorcerer types that have been mentioned by name. I mean, we know that Tessa has quite a bit of power. Dresden's concerned about her, and that comes up in a little bit when we see her cutting loose. We know that Rosanna can at least do some fire-based magic, but it's usually like Thorn and Namshiel and Lashiel that get the credit for being, the magical types, I think.
Yeah,
I think
and
there's one more,
I
but I
mean, out
can't
of
think of them right
30,
now.
it makes sense that there would be some more, but, I mean,
Sure.
Nicodemus says that with the loss of Thornamshiel that Tessa doesn't have her teacher anymore.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But again, Tessa's 1,500 years, right? It's how much is there left to teach?
Right.
How much
Right.
she should be quite, scary capable on her own.
Sure. Oh, and I
And
mean,
she
and
is.
he discusses that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know it is interesting. The other thing that's always a struggle to kind of comprehend is like these are angels, right? And usually when we're talking about them and theorizing and whatever, it's like any one of them has the ability to unmake like planets or galaxies or whatever theoretically, right? They are all quite powerful, presumably quite knowledgeable, right? Which is part of what makes the fallen, the Denarians so dangerous in their own right. And so it's like, why doesn't everybody do it? Like, I could understand Magog is just like, I just like turning people into putty, you know.
Right.
But it's like he should know quite a bit of magic in his own right, even still,
Yeah.
right? You know,
I
so
mean, the
it's
same
like,
thing with like Urseal. It's like
right,
it makes sense to have the archetype of just the big brute, but like they could
yeah,
be a lot more than big scary monster beast.
right. It makes
And
me wonder at like an
yeah,
angelic hierarchy, which, you know, if we're gonna go with Apocrypha, we know exists anyways. But I mean, more in the sense of like these guys were literally like the frontline soldiers, and they did not get any power or knowledge aside from that because they only were given whatever they needed to do the role, you know. And then, you know, like Lashiel and Thorn and Namshiel and Onduriel maybe, and I can't remember Tessa's demon's name, but it's like, you know, they were more sergeants, lieutenants, and stuff like that, and for whatever reason they needed to know more magic. You know, I don't know. So, but interesting musings, not going to keep us on track. So,
well, it do we want to highlight in some way that this is Thorned Namshiel in the way that of this what this guy looks like as he's gonna get
right,
squished? Do we want to there
yeah.
to be a thematic coherence between his design and Marcone later, or any other time that we might see Thorned Namshiel to show symbolically that there's a connection here?
I think there should be. I don't remember how transformed Marcone went. I think he was only like half, if that. You
It
know, so I don't really remember seeing anybody else produce the thorns, you know.
yeah.
So
I think Marcone looked very, very normal. Like, I don't solidly remember any form of transformation because they thought he just looked like himself, maybe with another set of eyes.
right, right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's like I don't think we technically have to worry about that answer, but yes, I think there should be some similarities of design. Now, where we would potentially is with Lashiel, right? Because
Mhm.
we've seen at least two hosts use her and her powers. So, you know, same kinds of pink or reds or oranges or whatever for Hellfire, you know, that sort of thing. Which I mean, Hellfire is Hellfire anyway, but like if there is any kind of relation, you know.
Right. There the other thing
Hell,
is
have the same actress play, it's not Ash, right? What was the
Asher,
what's the
Hannah
chick's
Asher.
name? It was in the one that took Lashiel?
Yeah, in Skin Game?
Okay.
Hannah Asher.
Yeah. Okay, that's the name that came to mind, but I was like, I was thinking that was one of the church mice, that's why I was hesitating.
Mm,
So,
right.
or yeah,
Something
anyway.
that of any of the Denarians, if we can see their sigil, then that's very
Mhm.
on the nose way of like, it's the same little squiggle, and therefore you can
Yes.
recognize them. We know more or less what
100%
Lashiel's
that
looks
needs to
like.
be consistent, you know? Yeah.
Do we even have an idea of what many of the other sigils look like?
No. Yeah, I think there's like 2 or 3 that get described that that come to mind, and I couldn't tell you who all of them were, right? I know like Dresden draws one in a donut that might actually also be Lashiel. And then he draws some for Michael and Sonia earlier in this book, but I don't know if they get described to us, right? So that gives us a lot of leeway potentially as well. But yeah, that would definitely be something where it's like we got to have one of the artists like, I need you to come up with designs for what the 30 coins look like, whether they show up on screen or not, you know. So
Yeah,
we'll put you through college. Congratulations. You know, we have an
30 is a
unlimited
lot.
budget, so we could do this. But yeah, especially because, well, because the other thing is we don't actually even know all 30 of their names, right? So
Right.
it's like we don't even know what all of their designs look like. So, you know, like they get referenced as 30, and this book very much capitalizes on the number 30 because, you know, we've captured 24 of the coins one way or another by the end of this engagement. But I think, you know, like I, because I looked once because I was trying to figure out like what maybe some of the roots were, because it's like we know
Mhm.
like El and L is all of God, presumably, right? You know, everybody should know
Mhm.
that. That's why calling shoot, why can't I remember his name just now?
Uriel.
Yeah, Uriel, calling him just, you know, or whatever he calls him is like, no, 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 or Yuri, right? He's like, no, the
Mhm.
L is very friggin' important, and you're a wizard who names shit, and you should fucking know better, right? That's why that's important. But it's like even the Denarians haven't dropped the L part, right? So they still consider themselves of God or keep the name for convenience. I don't know, but and Duriel, like I know that one is specifically, like I've gone through to try and find more information of it and whatever, and I didn't come up with anything at the time that I recall. So I need to go look at it. Obviously, there's some overlap with like Diablo. So it's like there's got to be some common Genesis somewhere. Like maybe he just lifted it from Diablo and that was enough. It's not
Possible.
like he hasn't lifted things from other video games before. But I'm just curious what some of the roots are. And Thorn and Namshiel is just kind of like bro likes thorns, okay? So like when he manifests, he's got thorns. So I don't know. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Design is
So
gonna be hard for Denarians, even if with unlimited budget, right? Like the making them seem distinct enough is gonna be a weird issue, as well as keeping the right level of intimidating.
maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I trivialize it because I don't know how much effort goes into it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So to me, I'm just like, yeah. I mean, certainly like we've got enough description for the ones that we see, I think, right? And that's part of why this section is going to be so long, partially as well, is because I try to lift that stuff out because that's going to be important for our design of the episode and everything, and just be like we know very well, Tessa, Nicodemus is easy as shit, except for lots of CGI with a shadow or
Mhm.
some craziness with practical effects to get a shadow to walk around without him and that sort of thing. Um, you know, that sort of thing. So, but Thornton Namshiel, poor guy is probably going to spend 8 hours in a makeup chair with some rubber thorns, and Magog is going to be like, okay, what do we do to this gorilla suit? Not really, but like
Mhm.
he might be fully CGI in this day and age, right? Just because it's
Yeah.
like, how are we going to get somebody the appropriate side? Ursiel definitely fully CGI, because it's just like he's gigantic, right?
And I mean,
Like
the T-Rex was practical, right? Like, why
that's what we demanded. Yes. So I think part of the reason was we were going to resurrect an actual T-Rex to have it, on
I mean, even if we have
set
to
with
go
us. So
through what Spielberg did in Jurassic Park, it's just like, you can animatronic it, right?
yeah, right. Yeah. 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 I mean,
Sincerely freak out the actors because something broke. It's a good idea.
sure. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it would be great to have Michael just get, Nickelodeon when he cuts Ursiel's head off, right? Where it's just like,
Mhm.
whoosh, and he's just like, what was I expecting? It was a
Yeah.
really cool flip and a decapitation, but obviously he's full of goo. So
The reason why they wear white, the knights, as their uniform, at least for Michael, is because you can bleach out the blood.
is that why?
Well, because if
Okay.
you can bleach it without ruining something, then it's just might as well
Definitely there's no symbolism involved here.
no,
Just the bleach.
bleach.
So yeah. Yeah, and they haven't learned the warden's recipe for having gray cloaks that don't absorb blood. So
That's a good point. Does he know Scotchgard?
right. I would anticipate Michael does, but yeah.
Or Charity
He
does.
yeah. They know a lot of these little practical uses for things. So
All right.
all right. I lifted my left hand just as the Darnarian crouched and vomited out a spinning cloud of black threads that came whirling through the air in dozens of tiny spiraling arcs. I brought up my shield, but none of the threads actually came down to touch me. They landed all around me instead in a nearly perfect circle. And an instant later, my shield stuttered and shorted out. I still had the energy for it. I hadn't been cut off, but somehow the Denarian's weird spell had disrupted the magic as it left my body. I tried to throw another bolt of force at him and got to feel supremely silly, waving my staff around to absolutely zero effect. Which 100% needs to be like drop all the music, all the background noise, and just have Dresden being like, Fazari! and just
Yep.
like throw a little tantrum of like, why isn't it working? Like it's just too perfect. So yeah. Which, while I'm switching notes here, like I watched another Ryan Gosling movie last night, and he was doing the private investigator thing, and I'm
What
like I don't know if
movie?
I'm the Nice Guys. So it's like
Alright.
I don't know if I'm alone on an island for this, but you know, still, he's kind of become my number one pick in a weird way. So, but
It's
yeah,
I
um,
mean, Ryan Gosling can do a lot of things. He's not exactly
mm,
Dresden, but you
not
you
exactly,
kinda
but
can't go wrong with
he keeps doing these like investigative noir types of movies, right? And I mean, he's done a few, is what it comes down to. Like this one came out in like 2015, 2016, so it's an older movie, but it's him and Gladiator, why can't I remember his name? Russell Crowe. And they're both sort of private investigators. Russell Crowe's not licensed, but he's adjacent to that line of work, we'll say. And it's got some adult film things in it, so there's going to be some nudity if you're not inured to that sort of thing. But yeah, he plays. It's funny actually because Ryan Gosling plays basically, I don't know, like a coward type or whatever, like lower decks Boimler. Like he spends like a third of the movie screaming, which is also fantastic, right? And so I was like, that's kind of a new side even for Ryan Gosling that I hadn't seen before, where it's like he's driving the car off of something and it's falling and he's screaming, and the other guy's like, I'm good with this, right? And so yeah, it's just kind of funny. And it was like, yep, I can't shake the fact that like we need somebody of that caliber, if nothing else, for our Dresden. So Thorn and Namshiel. So
Mhm, mhm.
his left hand returned to rummaging in his bag, while his mortal eyes went back to the now scattered remnants of the spell, evidently dismissing me from existence. The green eyes remained focused on me, though, and darkness suddenly gathered around the forefinger of his upraised right hand. Time slowed down. Dark light leapt toward me. Sheer defiance made me step forward, trying to brush past the little spinning columns of shadow that surrounded me, only to find them as solid as steel bars and colder than a Yeti's fridge, which presumably is very cold. I threw my magic against those bars to no avail as a shaft of dark lightning streaked toward my heart. Something happened. I don't know how to describe it. I was trying to slam another bolt of force between the bars of my conjured prison when something else got involved. Ever been carrying something and had someone intentionally, unexpectedly jostle your elbow? It felt something like that, a tiny but critically timed nudge just as I threw my will into a last futile effort of defiance. Power screamed as it wrenched its way out of my body. It shattered the black thread bars of my prison, left a streak of metallic light on the air behind it for an instant, reflective like a trail of liquid chrome. It caught the falling Denarian in a massive, silvery simulacrum of my own fist. I actually felt my fingers close over the gaunt, skeletal, gray skinned figure, felt the numerous spurs of bone jutting from its joints press painfully into my flesh. I flung it away from me with a cry, and the huge silver hand flung the Denarian into the nearest wall, ripping through several feet of expensive stone, terracing and carefully simulated Pacific Northwest. I stared for a second, first at the stunned Denarian and then at my own spread fingers and at the floating silvery hand beyond, mirroring my movements. Then the skeletal Denarian gathered itself and rose fast as hell until I shoved the heel of my hand forward and drove his bony ass 6 inches into the wall of rock behind him. Oh, yeah, baby! Talk to the hand! I picked up the thorny fiend by a leg and laughed as it raked and it raked and bit and scrabbled at the construct that held it. I could feel the pain of it, but it was a small thing, really. Something I might have gotten from a rat. Unpleasant as hell, but I'd felt much, much worse. And it was nothing compared to the agony of the power still burning inside me. I slammed him into the wall again and then swung him 20 feet through the air, shoved him through a pane of unbroken 3-inch thick glass on the outer wall of the oceanarium, drew him back through, and then rammed him through the next one, and the next one, and the one after that, cutting him to tatters as I did. I had maybe half a second's warning as my already overloaded nerves screamed that the circle was closing, that the sign was rising. As I felt the surge of energy approaching from no more than a dozen yards away, there was still no time for a shield. So Spiny Boy would have to do. I flung him between me and where my instinct warned me the inbound power was coming from, and then there was a roar like a dozen turbine engines howling to life in synchronization. 30 feet from me, the walls exploded in light and hellfire. Heat, light, and sheer intangible power slammed against my senses and threw me from my feet. Bits of molten rock hissed through the air, deadlier than any bullet. Spiny Boy caught a bunch of those. They flew out his back and left gaping, smoking, cauterized holes in it. I could see them through the silvery haze of the construct hand that still held him, could feel the heat as they bored through the construct, and then my head bumped the ground hard enough to make me see stars. I rolled to my feet and nearly wobbled over the railing and into the pool with the whales. I slammed the end of my staff into the ground and with my left hand leaned heavily against it, panting. I was still alive. I still retained an agonizing amount of energy. So far, I thought woozily everything was going exactly according to plan. The skeletal, spiny Denarian lay twitching on the ground 10 or 12 feet in front of me. There were big smoking holes in his body. One of his arms was moving, so was his head, but its legs and lower body were completely limp. I could see the bones of its spine standing out sharply from its gaunt, emaciated back. Two of the smoking holes intersected that spine precisely. He or she, I supposed, if it mattered, wasn't going anywhere. Great currents of energy, 8 or 9 feet thick, intersected maybe 50 feet away. It was like looking at the cross section of a river in flood. If the river had been made of fire instead of water, and if the two rivers could have intersected and passed through each other without affecting each other's course. I turned my head and saw through the walls of glass that I'd broken more of the same beams all around the oceanarium in an unbroken wall. The eerie part was that the fiery current of energy was silent, absolutely silent. There was no crackle of flame, no roar of superheated air, no hiss of steam and snow as snow and ice melted. I heard some rubble falling, stone landing on stone. I heard a broken electrical line somewhere spitting and snapping for a few seconds before it too went silent. So that's a lot, but there's just so much, density
Mhm.
there where it's just like, we get the Soulfire for the first time and we kick Thorn and Amshield's ass and then we use them as a human shield. And there's just a lot of description and everything. So, so yeah. Um, so Dresden crouches in the walkway, the walls on his right, windows facing the outside of the oceanarium on his left. Again, kind of important to help like set him where he is. And the beam of the hellfire at my back. It was the most secure position I was likely to get. There was still no sound, which meant that they hadn't tried to take the archive yet. Kincaid would not go down quietly.
Oh no.
So, so yeah, that was just chapter 30. All of that. So we made one chapter in half an hour. So anyway, we're doing good.
I thought we would be doing better with this just two of us. Nope.
Right. Yeah, sometimes we really get into our conversation, so sometimes we try to corral the others. But chapter 31, a little bit of fun here. The dolphins are helping Dresden. I don't know if I picked all of it. I might have, a little bit later, but it seems like the dolphins are team reality, right? They're definitely working for the good guys and everything like that. So he has some musings on that. But he sees the Denarians start, breaking through the sunroof, and coming down and everything like that. So Dresden picks the outermost of the invaded Denarians, one of the farthest from the center of action and attention. Pointed my staff at him from my hiding spot amidst the green and snarled Fozare. So Dresden's hiding in these like Pacific Northwest bushes that he mentions, a bunch of times. So
he's Bigfoot.
Invisible. Yeah, right. Invisible force caught the shape-shifted fiend as he was falling. I never got much of a look at him beyond the fact that he had a lot of muscle and a ridge of leathery plates running down his spine. So again, like we get some description, but we'll have plenty to play around with because it's like we got to see this. We can't just like leave it up to your imagination, or whatever. So I wasn't trying to smash him into the middle of the lake. I applied just enough force to alter his trajectory, shoving the falling Denarian 30 feet off course, and he landed in one of those beams of titanic energy. There was a flash of white light, a brief shadow of a human skeleton burned onto my vision, and then a white hot something went spitting out from the beam. It landed in one of the pools in an angry gush of steam. The dolphins darted away from it. Then I froze, not moving. Denarians fell like rain, more than a dozen of them, landing with heavy sounding thumps and a couple of splashes and a splat. One of them, a lizard looking thing, had fallen into the foliage behind me, not 5 feet from my hiding spot, with about 2/3 of his head simply missing from its shoulders. It twitched wildly for several seconds, pumping very human looking blood all over the place before it slowly went still and simply started draining. My eyes tracked up to the roof and found a darkened corner. Kincaid hung in it like a spider, suspended from some sort of harness and perfectly still, and I realized that he'd had the same idea I had: remove them before they'd realized that the battle was well and truly begun. While they were still holding back all of their power to unleash in concentration, he gave me a grim little smile, moved his head in an after you sort of gesture, and raised a rifle sporting a heavy outsized silencer to his cheek. So, yeah, he's like,
Mhm.
I'm not going anywhere. So,
Yeah. And what kind of sound should we actually expect from a gun like that with a very large silencer? Because silencers don't make it silent.
yeah, I mean, you're probably it's Hollywood silencer, right? So,
You go
so
pew
you're gonna
pew.
get the little, where it's just like hook up a CO2 tank to a paintball gun, make sure there aren't any rounds in it, and pull the trigger. Even that is louder than what Hollywood makes
Yeah.
silencers sound like. But
Yeah.
because the other thing that it doesn't silence is the mechanics of the bolt slamming back and forth. And so I gotta imagine Kincaid takes some extra precautions there if it's possible to soften those noises. But
Well,
yeah,
here's a
like
the thought, maybe hand wavy type of question. Does Kincaid do magic? Can Kincaid do a little bit of a veil to just hide himself a little bit more as well as dampen the sound magically?
maybe, but there's nothing to imply that that ever happens. If
Right.
that's the answer we want to come up with, that's us making shit up, though. So,
Well,
it makes sense. And Kincaid, if he's a non-human entity, is a magical creature, right? So there's room for that sort of thing. But I'm just saying, if we're going to keep it straight to the material, like, we don't
yeah.
need to address it any more than Jim addressed it, in my opinion. So
It just depends on how accurate or how supportive of inaccuracy do you want to be about gun sounds?
let's put it this way, okay? I'm less concerned with the report on the rifle than I am concerned that we don't have any stupid moments where somebody racks a gun that should already clearly be loaded, or racks it multiple times, right? Because like it's funny because like one of the ones that sticks out to me for this is the remake of Dawn of the Dead, where they're trapped in the mall and everything like that. It's got Ving Rhames as the cop, and like when I started watching it, I hadn't really started, down my firearm journey yet and everything. So I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, what a great movie and whatever. But after I'd been doing it for a while and everything, and then Ving Rhames is like in the hallway, and it's like, we're gonna go out into the garage, and he's already got a shotgun. That thing's already loaded. But in the midst of the conversation, he racks it 2 or 3 additional times. So I'm like, no. Like, working the slide on your weapon is not punctuation to a sentence, guys. Like, let's not do that, please. So, and it's not a big deal. Like, I'd say, at least 50% of the audience isn't going to catch it, and whatever. But
Right, but
let's make sure Kincaid doesn't do silly things. Maybe Dresden can. Like, I think it'd be hilarious for Dresden to be like, "Let's go," and then he racks it, and then he drops around. I think that could be hilarious. And Murphy'd be like, "Still Dresden," like, we could add something like that if you really wanted to. But otherwise, like, let's try, and maybe it's an editing thing, and the people are like, it's not worth editing that out. But it's like, just don't. You don't make lightsaber sounds if you're a Jedi, because we're gonna add those in post, and you don't rack your freaking gun. I'm just saying, these are
okay.
things that don't need to happen from the actors, right? So
Just a small anecdote if you didn't know it. One of the things that probably got Arnold Schwarzenegger the role for Terminator is that when he was suggesting to
mhm.
James Cameron is that whoever is playing it needs to not look at the gun while he's racking it because he's not human. It
Right.
needs to be perfect, and it needs to be machine alien kind of not needing to look at anything. That's the kind of thing that we're gonna go for.
I I wanna say it was, like, the cleaning, like, he goes
Oh,
through
could
a
be,
scene where he's
yeah.
cleaning the weapons, and he's like, "I need to be able to, like, field strip these guns without even looking at them," or
Yeah, I don't
something.
remember exactly
And
what thing, but need to be
yeah.
able to do gun thing without looking at it, without making mistakes.
Right. And it's funny because, like, part of that anecdote is, like, I think they were thinking somebody else for that role initially, but it was because he was so, like, passionate about it and brought all of
Mhm.
this extra to it of being like, "He's really not human. Don't let them screw this up. Don't do XYZ. Don't whatever." He's like, "Do you just wanna play the role?" Like, and
I think he did
that's part
audition
of
for it, but yeah, I think they weren't
yeah.
gonna go with him until that probably, is supported, like, "No, let's just go with the guy who cares and gives a shit."
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how much that shows through, right? You can
Mhm.
tell when people care about the material, and like you wouldn't think so because it's like it's just a 2D image still, that we're watching and whatever. But it's like you can kind of feel the difference in energy sometimes when it's like, oh yeah, these guys are just doing it for a paycheck. That guy read the fucking books.
Yeah,
So,
and that other guy's
or at
going way
least
too hard, but it's still great.
right, right. Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing, it's like, I mean, I love Ving Rhames' character, right? But it is funny to me because that stairwell scene, it's like, here it comes, now and
Mm,
whatever, and it's one of the more egregious ones that I can think of, but, like, yeah, people will be like, "Wait, is that really how it would work?" And it's like, "Okay, look, I don't know everything, but, like, don't do that in a conversation," It's like,
yeah.
that thing's already ready to go, and Kincaid would be ready to go. Like, the other thing is, like, Kincaid didn't just, like, presumably he didn't just fly up to that spider hole. So by the time Dresden's like, Kincaid, they're coming for Ivy, it's like, what do you think Kincaid's been doing for the last 5 minutes? He's been getting in position. He already knew, like,
Yeah.
so it's just it's like the same thing with the duel with Ortega. It's like he didn't just like manifest those shotguns with with the
He
magnesium rounds in
was
them. He
prepared.
he fucking knew. It's like, okay, so yeah. And that's the thing, it's like you wanna honor the character because it's like, yeah, I'm not a soldier of fortune assassin, but it's like maybe we can get a consultant for the day and just be like, "Let's make sure that our guy looks the part." So, okay, so Tessa splashes in the pool because she actually goes for the coin before anything else happens. Interesting little detail, it's included in the book and everything, so I included it.
Yeah, no.
Dresden's doing his best predator impersonation with being crap at veils. So he pressed on through the ferns, angling over toward the amphitheater seats, and dropped down into a sudden crouch as the low murmur of voices came to me. Where is she? Demanded a heavy, thick sounding man's voice. I couldn't see the source of the voices from amidst the fake wilderness until I glanced up. Light and shadow played together in the room and conspired to create a reflective surface for me upon one of the panels of glass on the ceiling, which that's just brilliant. I don't think I had caught that entirely before. So it's like he's watching them through a freaking mirror, basically. Three of the Denarians had gathered on the bleacher seats. The one who spoke looked like nothing so much as a big, leathery gorilla, except for the goat's horns and heavy claws. Shut up, Magog, snarled Mantis Girl. I can't think with you running your stupid mouth. She knows that, snapped a third Denarian. I recognized this one, which looked like a woman, except for the reverse jointed legs ending in panther claws, the bright red skin, and the massive metallic 10-foot long, independently moving blades in place of hair. I also didn't associate her with like just being red, which makes her much more
Yeah.
nightmarish, in my opinion. So, because
Some
now
people
I'm
portray her
thinking of
as
like those.
weirdly gray, but
Right. Yeah, that's what I associate her with is that she's more metallic overall and stuff with like dull and reflective surfaces and stuff. But like it seems like, because she's also mostly naked, I think, right? So it's just like
mhm,
she is all red. Just to me, the image is flayed because that's even more nightmarish, right? Where it's just like all
okay.
but, missing the skin and whatever. And then the blades. But Deidre, Nicodemus's darling daughter. She turned back to Tessa, but Magog has a point, Mother. Scent tracking has been useless. She held up a small pink sock. Bits of clothing with her scent on them have been scattered everywhere. That's the hellhound's work, Magog spat, bright green eyes glowing brightly over dull, animalistic brown ones. He's fought us before. He hunts us, Deidre said, while she forces us to focus on piercing a veil. They work too well together. He's killed two of us, three if you count Arumviel, which is probably the one Dresden got. So we get a name, but not much of
Mhm.
a description. So then Tessa does the evil overlord thing. Bring me the hellhound. But and I think my favorite part about this whole thing is that Nicodemus 100% used Tessa in this moment too.
Oh,
Whereas,
yeah.
like, we don't even play that well together. Why don't you have the honor of bringing down the archive for me and commit all of your forces while I wait outside and don't get my ass kicked? So that has always kind of been my take of what this is. But
Yeah, the
um,
description that, they are married and that's why they hate each other, it is funny
yes.
sometimes.
Well, I mean, marriage is the only war where you sleep with the enemy, right? So they took that quite literally, apparently. So, but
You'd think they'd figure out how to get divorced.
they're like immortal, quasi immortal beings with like angels in their heads. So it's like, I gotta imagine some of that stuff is just like trivial to them, where it's just like,
Yeah.
what's the point? And we're gonna like run into each other anyway because they're very clearly capable of spending time apart and working on
Oh, yeah.
parallel projects, right? And that helps strengthen their relationship. But then occasionally they come together and they work on the same thing, like kidnapping the archive. And
Their
you
Thanksgiving
know,
dinners must be a blast.
oh, I'm sure, yeah. All right, so chapter 32. We got two chapters. We're improving. Deidre was closest. Fine. I stepped out from the ferns, swept my staff at a broad backhanded swing, and unleashed some of the power I'd been painfully holding back, snarling Ventus Servitas. Um, yeah, I made a note for myself here without context, which is funny, but um, Dresden being an idiot, thinking with his chivalry again. So,
Mhm.
but I think the idea that I had was like, he's not hitting her with like force, like he's just like, but she's a little girl, even though she's got no skin and is made of razor blades, and it's like,
And is, like, 8 feet tall, something.
yeah, yeah. Um, so a burst of wind gathered underneath. Deirdre lifted her out of the amphitheater seats and throwing her out over the pool like a dart shot from a child's air gun. I'd thrown her at the nearest section of the pentagram's beam, but the instant she'd gone airborne, the snake-like strips of her hair had fanned out like a tattered parachute and began thrashing at the air, slowing her and changing her course. I didn't stop to watch where she landed. Magog spun before Deirdre's feet were more than a yard off the ground and broke into one of those diagonal simian charges, coming right up the bleachers as smoothly as if they'd been level ground. Forget what I'd said about not reacting quickly. Magog's reaction time had been nothing, if not a little less. He had to have checked in at 7 or 800 pounds, and he covered the 40 feet between us in the space of a couple of seconds, the acceleration incredible. Of course, reacting quickly isn't always the same thing as reacting intelligently. Magog looked like he was used to being an unstoppable force. I brought up my shield bracelet, slamming my will through it, pushing most of the painful load of power still remaining to me into the barrier that sprang to life. I shouted out in wordless challenge, my voice thin and strained beside the deep chested bellow that Magog unleashed in answer. Normally, my shield manifests as a shimmering dome of mixed blue and silver light. This time, I left it transparent on the theory that what Magog didn't know would hurt him. The shapeshifted Denarian slammed into the invisible barrier in an explosion of silver sparks and found it as immovable as the side of a mountain. The force of the gorilla thing's charge was not simply physical, though, and ugly red light clung to the silver power of my defenses. Excess energy bled through my bracelet as heat scalding my skin, but the barrier held, and Magog staggered back, stunned. Hey, where's an 800 pound gorilla sit? I took a step forward and kicked him as hard as I could, right in the coconuts, then followed up with a stomping kick to the neck. Magog shrieked in agony and went tumbling back down the bleachers. Somewhere with lots of extra cushions, I guess, monkey boy? It's not his best work, but it's
No.
still funny. So my instinct screamed a warning at me, and I threw myself down behind the last row of bleacher seats just as Mantis Bitch pointed a finger at me and screamed, Amal Bajal. or Bayal maybe, but there was a crash of thunder, a flash of light, a wash of heat, and a cloud of glowing splinters flew up a few feet away where a section of seating had been a second before. So Dresden's like, yeah, sure, I could take 3 of the named Denarians that are, the most badass and not to be underestimated, and I'll take them at the same time. So,
Mhm. It is, very stupid of him. I guess he knows where Kincaid is and they don't.
sure.
He's got that on his side, but no, 3 named Denarian's bad
And
idea.
yeah, he just didn't think it through with Deirdre, where he's like, if I get her in the beam, then I'm only fighting 2 of them. But like, even still, 2 on
Mhm.
1 odds is very not good for you, Dresden, especially
Yeah.
when they're Denarians.
Mhm.
Like 2 on 1 ghouls, okay, fine, whatever. But um, the light spots began to clear away in time for me to see a Denarian I'd never seen before atop me. This one, like an androgynous, naked, bald statue of obsidian, green eyes glowing above human eyes of bright blue. A second shapeshifted creature, this one covered in a shaggy coat of gray, dusty looking feathers, its face a gray mass of fleshy, hanging tendrils, had my wrists pinned to the ground. So I had
Shaggy
never
feathers.
realized the tendrils thing. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
Did he get a name?
I think Dresden just calls him Shaggy Feathers. I don't. I think Tessa's about to give us a bunch of the names, but we'll see. So report. Tessa said, "We think the Hellhound is hiding in the bathrooms." Came a strange sounding, harsh woman's voice. You think? Barthiel and Ordiel are down, and McCollin is dead. McCollin, like, yeah, that's like Barthiel, Ordiel, and Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin's down. So they were searching there. The exit is watched. There's no way for him to escape the room. Their coins recovered, my lady. Thank you, Rosanna. Any other word? We've found Thorn and Namshiel unconscious and gravely wounded. There was extensive damage all around the area in which he fell. Yes, and yet it was done fairly quietly. It seems our intelligence on our young wizard thug was faulty. Nicodemus just like not telling them everything, probably.
I mean, no, to be
So
fair, if for Dresden to do something quietly is a bit rare.
that's fair. Yeah. He's like, I'm
He's
surprised myself.
Yeah,
So,
no,
yeah.
he's loud, the building's burned down, there's lots and lots of property damage.
I had
For
nothing
it
to
to
do
be
with that
quiet?
one. So,
Eh,
yeah. Yeah. Someone, presumably Mantis Bitch, kicked me in the ribs. It hurt. There wasn't much I could do about it other than try to suck in a breath. Very well, Tessa said. Take Magog and Deirdre for the Hellhound. Take him alive. Do it within the next 5 minutes. Yes, my lady, Rosanna rasped. What sounded like hooves clopped away. So now Tessa's going to try and convert Dresden. I'm skipping some of the conversation, but she's like, they say to give a man 3 chances to say no. She said, "Save us both time and breath." I said, "No, twice. That's 3. Suit yourself." She reached into the pocket of my duster, withdrew my revolver, pointed it at my head, and pulled the trigger. I just That's evil overlord shit right there. Like, no preamble, no more monologuing. Like, I'm just gonna kill you now. So
yeah, no, it's good.
I
That should be an episode end.
right. I had just enough time to gawk and think, wait, this isn't right. The muzzle flashed. There was a loud noise. I reached for power, tried to shield, but there was simply nothing there, nothing to use. The magic was gone. So it had to be someone else's spell that neatly intersected the bullet's course and bounced it into the shaggy feathered thing holding my arms. My stomach sank as I realized what was happening. Oh, yeah, I
Yes,
think
you
there's
moron.
yeah. There is some conversation where he realizes that like Ivy's just hiding and like it's very important that they don't get Kincaid because, you know, Kincaid is like the only family that she has. And then this is where he realizes he's an idiot. So um Ivy must have been there all along, quietly sitting on the bleachers, hidden by her veil from everything that was going on. Now she stood perhaps 10 feet away, just a young girl, her expression solemn, but her eyes and cheeks were bright with tears. Get away from him, she said quietly. All of you.
You
I will
bitch.
not permit Yeah, right. I will not permit you to hurt him. Yeah, it's a shame it's been like 20 something years because it's like you got to get the girl who played the Red Queen in Resident Evil and be like, you're all going to
Mm.
die down here. It's like we need that energy brought in. So I hadn't really extended my line of thinking beyond Kincaid, but of all the people who had dealt with the archive, I'd been one of the only ones to take any interest in her as anything other than a font of knowledge. I'd been the one to inquire after her personally. I'd been the one to give her a name. Sad but true, I was the closest thing that little girl had to a friend. She couldn't have let anything happen to me either, and I just handed her to the Denarians. Tessa threw back her head and let loose a long, triumphant cry. Dresden, you fool. So,
Mhm.
Ivy, I said in that tone you use with children who are up past their bedtime. I'm better at it than you'd think after so much time working with an apprentice. Get that veil back up and get out of here. Tessa kicked me in the ribs again, hard enough to keep me from breathing much or talking at all. When I want an opinion from you, Dresden, I'll read it in your entrails. Which, as
Augury.
threats go, is pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's
So Ivy took 2 steps forward at Tessa's gesture
not
and
augury,
narrowed her blue
haruspexy.
eyes. Yeah. Wow. That
I got my occultishness mixed up.
mm. I didn't I don't think I've heard that word before, so good job. Um, for the benefit of the slow, Polonius Lartessa, I will repeat myself. I will not allow you to harm him. Step away. Tessa's eyes narrowed suddenly. You know my name. I know everything about you, Lartessa, Ivy said, her tone flat and passionless. It was all recorded, of course. Everything was in Thessalonica in those days. Your father's failing business, your sale to the Temple of Isis. If you like, I could draw you a cost benefit analysis of your training versus your earnings in your first year at the temple before Nicodemus came. I could use charts to make it easier for you to understand and color them with crayons. I enjoy crayons. So Dresden even muses like, is she talking back to them on my behalf? Like,
Probably.
so
But this is a
uh,
moment of like, why is Tessa surprised that the archive knows her name?
right.
It's a good setup for Ivy to talk shit,
Yes,
but Tessa should know more a little bit. She should understand that the archive knows everything that's been written down, including internet.
presumably. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, maybe it's a secret. Maybe they only know it in passing, or something like that. Because it's like the other part of this is like, why is this not happened up to this point, right? Why is this the first time the Denarians are trying to capture her? So, like,
Uh,
obviously, she's got a bodyguard and a really fucking good one. So people have tried to take a whack at her, or that's been a concern anyway. But like,
but this is
yeah,
Endgame. This is the time when shit's trying to matter. They didn't need
but
her
why
100
is
years
this
ago.
Endgame? I've been thinking about this a lot, which is why I'm ready with these
Yeah,
questions, because it's like Nicodemus almost certainly had something to do with the Black Plague, right? And the fool didn't realize that like washing our hands and lowering the population to a certain level was going to basically break the plague anyway. And so like obviously now is one of the times where it's like he can get Ivy to get the nuclear codes to launch nukes. That's what Dresden think is going to happen. But like we've also had nukes for like 50 years.
right.
So
So there's because the BAT, that's a meta answer, but
yes,
shit's
yeah,
happening.
right.
Shit's happening because of Starborn. Nicodemus knows what a Starborn is, even if Harry
That's
doesn't.
fair.
And Nicodemus has
So we
been
think
thinking,
there's some cosmic timing involved with this as
yes.
well?
And
Okay,
that also explains Skin Game. Why did it
sure.
matter for him to get the Grail now? Why did he
Right.
have to
Not
sacrifice
the
his
last
daughter?
2,000 years?
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's he think the timing is
Okay.
happening now, leading up to it.
That's a good answer. That notwithstanding, if it happens every 666 years, it's happened 2, if not 3
Mm,
times
yeah.
since.
So
So, there's
why this one?
still, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, one of the answers I would say is, like, the primitive cultures, right, don't necessarily lend themselves to the apocalypse very well, right? It's like, okay, you have a plague and it wipes out the Mongols, and that takes a lot of people out, but that still ain't everybody, right? So it's like if he's got to wipe out humanity for some reason, because nuclear war is going to be pretty much like 99+% fatality, most likely. With Nicodemus on the trigger, that's almost certainly what's going to happen, right? So it's like if he's going for all of it, yeah, that's harder to do in my opinion in the medieval ages or before, certainly, because it's like you don't even have really like global trade, like,
Right.
okay, so you infect all of the trading ships and they show up and they plague a bunch of cities and that spreads a little bit. It'll be lethal. We've clearly seen that happen, like the Black Plague, again, an example, but it's like you do have to have a certain amount of like infrastructure for that to be a problem. So like it's easier to do in like, the 50s through the 70s and whatnot, where like air travel starts to take off. So now we've got a 12 monkeys situation.
Mhm.
And then it's even easier when nuclear weapons are invented. But it's like, at what point was the critical mass where it's like we could have destroyed the planet 3 times over anyway? So why did we wait the additional 20 years? So that being said, we're inside that 666-year window and it's coming up. That I could buy,
Well,
so.
yeah, so 666-year thing happened when Dresden was born, and so there's
Oh, that's
a
true too.
there's a
Yeah.
time there's a
So
time
plus
thing that's happening. A
40
clock
apparently,
yeah, like, there's some form of,
because
like,
he's gotta mature.
countdown clock, but it might not be tied to the Starborn. It might be something else,
Mhm.
and now you just have Starborns that are available when a big significant thing is happening.
Sure.
Didn't Jim say,
Fulcrum.
"The last time this happened, it was about 2,000 years ago?" So that he's not talking about the Starborn. He's talking about
Well,
a different period of time. EG's not
I
here.
would
Damn him.
say, yeah, like 1,894 years ago is pretty close to 2,000, and
It's
I'd be
true,
down for
sure.
that. And we've always had that question of how that works out because Rashid was there last time, you know, and we
Right.
just kind of assume he skips through time in the Never Never, but there are unanswered
Mhm.
questions is kinda my point, so, but
Do
yeah.
you think Harry's gonna ask any of them?
I mean, hell, actually, it just occurred to me, maybe that's part of the time travel book, right? Like, maybe Rashid literally just time travels, and that was the shenanigans, and that's even more why he's like, "You really don't need to fuck with time travel because let me tell you the last time that I did, 2,000 years ago."
Hmm.
So but
I could see Rashid, educating Harry as to why he needs to do time travel. I like
right.
that as a hook.
Yeah. Remember how I told you to never push the red button? It is time for you to push the red button. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Yep. And which, God help us that Dresden is gonna time travel because he is not smart enough to have that much impact, He's not smart enough to understand that much impact, let alone to wield it. So,
Do you think he takes Bob with him
God, I hope so. There's gotta be at least 2 brain cells between them at that point. So,
until they see boobs?
oh, yeah.
Uh,
All right, let's finish this chapter, and then I think we'll have made it through 3 chapters for next time. It just gets very dense. I was realizing this morning that it's like really with his writing style and the ebb and flow and everything, the the aquarium is the crescendo. The aquarium is the climax because I was also saying like I've read more than this. Like I read more than my requisite 10 chapters and whatever, but I didn't finish it. I'm at, we're 50 pages to the end and they've just gotten to Demon Reach more or less. And so it's like even the Demon Reach stuff, which you would think would be like the final climax and whatever, that's like a hiccup compared to what happens at the aquarium. So it just goes very fast because quite a
mhm.
lot happens in those 50 pages,
Yeah.
including like maybe my copy comes up short because I've had that problem in the past, but it's like that also includes the date with Lucio at the end, which is only a handful
Mm.
of pages, but it's like everything happens in 50 pages. So it's just like, but anyway, we've digressed enough today. So the little girl didn't see the Denarian that came creeping through the ferns behind her and flung itself at her back, several 100 pounds of scales and fangs. Ivy, I choked out. She had it covered. There was a flash of light, an overwhelming scent of ozone and fresh laundry, and a silver denarius rolled away from a mound of ash that fell to the ground without ever getting within 3 feet of the small form of the archive. The coin rolled past her on a straight line toward Tessa, but Ivy stomped on it with one small shoe, flattening it to the floor and preventing it from returning it to Tessa's grasp. Which it's like, that's fucking epic, even coming out of like an 8 to an 11-year-old. Like, I
Mhm.
just want the gravitas of that stomp is
Yeah.
magnificent. So, Tessa called out, "Around her, everyone. Make sure she knows where you are." And nightmarish forms rose around the girl, huge beside her single, slender little form. Deidre, soaked and smelling of dead fish and seawater, gave me a sullen glare as she mounted the steps beside her mother. The shaggy feathered thing that had held my hands bled, quietly keening under its breath. It was wounded, but it still kept my arms pinned. Magog came monkeying up over a bit of landscaping, grinning an evil grin, and I wondered where the hell Kincaid had wandered off to. The obsidian statue shifted its weight, keeping one hand resting on my chest. I had the feeling it could have shoved it right through to my spine if it wanted to. There were half a dozen others. Rosanna proved to be a rather beautiful looking woman, the classical demoness with scarlet skin and goat's legs compared with the leathery black wings and delicately curling horns, though her deep brown eyes were haunted beneath the demonic green glowing set. She had a bag slung on a strap over her shoulder, just like Spiny Boy. Tessa had called him Thorded Namshiel, had carried with him. Most of the others just looked big and mean in various unsettling flavors. So we see like a dozen of them, but we
Mhm.
don't really get descriptions. So yeah, that'll be the challenge, right? Ivy faced them and lifted her arms into a pose that vaguely resembled a defensive martial arts stance. It wasn't. She was preparing to manipulate defensive energies. I just hadn't ever seen anyone getting ready to do two entirely separate spells in either hand at the same freaking time before.
Yeah.
Two questions occurred to me at that point. First, if the plan was for the Denarians to wear Ivy's magic down and then take her by main force before their trap ran out of power, why weren't they doing it already? And second, what's that hissing sound?
Weren't there
It
5 of you before?
yeah, right. It rose up around us, something I could just barely hear until I focused my senses on it, tuning out the musky reek and iron blood scent of shaggy feathers and the cold solidity of obsidian statue's hand. Let's see. Yeah, so there's some more thinking and whatever, but the verbal is what we're going to need anyway. But I turned my head back toward her and caught Tessa's gaze halfway. Worked it out, did you? Mantis Girl murmured. If he speaks, she said, presumably to Obsidian Statue, crush his chest. A weirdly modulated voice issued from the general area of the androgynous statue's head. Yes, miss. And then there was a whoop and a slap of air pressure against my skin, and the statue's head, and shaggy feathers too, exploded in simultaneous eruptions of distinctly different forms of gore. So, I mean, green and brown, or should we just go orange and blue and just, the statue went
Well,
out.
obsidian has got to shatter badly, right? And
Sure. And then green. I don't know. So,
yeah.
The statue went out like some kind of faulty street paving machine, splattering black sludge that looked like hot asphalt everywhere in a steadily spurting stream. It flung itself on its back, then bounded to its hands and knees and started hammering its fists at the concrete. I guess it intended to smash me. I guess without a head, it didn't know that it was actually 6 feet away and digging a hole through the bleachers and into the material beneath. Shaggy feathers just fell in a welter of very human looking, smelling, and tasting blood. Okay, so that question's been answered. And maybe 300 pounds of limp, rubbery muscle landed on my chest. I got to switch my notes because that's how thick this is. Ivy, I screamed, gas, get clear. And then things got noisy. A series of cracking thumps came down faster than you could rapidly snap your fingers, and Denarians began to scream in pain and rage. I was vaguely aware of them bounding left and right and saw a muzzle flash from the far side of the oceanarium. At least I knew where Kincaid had been, getting into a position to kill both demon-taken madmen holding me down with a single freaking bullet, since anything less would have meant my certain death. Wait just a moment. I think I can save you $500.
Kin kept.
Yeah, right. Bing pot. All right. The falling coin. So one of the coins from the Denarians, maybe one of the ones that Ivy, barbecues, but the falling coin missed touching my bare flesh by a hair and bounced off the concrete floor. My left hand moved faster and smoother than I would have thought possible, snapping the coin from the air on the bounce as smoothly and nimbly as if it had been whole and healthy and not burned and scarred and covered in a leather glove. So
Okay, he's
there's a
wearing a
lot.
leather glove. It's like, wait, how the he's
Yes.
grabbing what? Okay, leather
Yeah,
glove.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of that. It's like the coins become very important during this fight, you know. So um yeah, and I'm trying to remember. I want to say, yeah, it's the one with Murphy, and I think we talked about it last time. But it's like, you know, she kills one of the Donarians, but it's like it's almost like Han Solo, right? Like I didn't think I hit it that hard, but then the coin comes jumping out, and it's like, you know, don't pick it up. Oh no, I think it's the water here in a minute, actually. After all the action, so anyway, it wasn't that Ivy was slinging around a lot of power. She wasn't. But think about this for a moment. What's really more impressive? A giant truck rumbling around on a great big old smoky engine, or a little car barely big enough to get the job done that's powered by a couple of AA batteries. 7 of them were going after Ivy with magic, and she was countering them. All of them. Magog had charged her as he had me, but she hadn't slammed him to a stop with a brick wall. She trapped him inside some kind of frictionless bubble, and he was spinning uselessly in circles a half an inch off the floor. Every motion making him spin faster. Whatever additional metaphysical mass he'd brought to the fight hadn't cramped her style much. Her arms bobbing and weaving continuously between all the workings she had up, flicked by the field containing him every few seconds, and I swear, oh, wrong button, struck his whirling snare for no other reason than to impart an additional nausea inducing vector to his spin, which that's just petty and amazing.
Yeah.
So,
No, no, no.
um,
Petty is a good thing here.
yes, yeah, I mean, for sure, but it's still hilarious, you know? Deidre's tangle of living locks danced with purple St. Elmo's fire, lashing out in a deadly web work, but Ivy constantly cast out a spinning cat's cradle of light, tiny, tiny threads of power that did not so much stop any of Deidre's attacks as they fouled any one of her locks with others near it, tangling them together into useless clumps. Sort of an enforced bad hair day. On the opposite side of Ivy, Rosanna launched more traditional lances of flame from her open palms, much like the ones I. A savage pain went through my skull for a second. Son of a bitch! Which I also did not remember from before.
Mhm.
But Ivy dispersed them delicately with delicately applied wedges of air. So, in case you're not catching up with where I am, Dresden can't think about fire magic right now any more than he can think about his blasting rod because of Mab's,
Yeah.
you know, mental
Mhm.
magic. So yeah. Um, so Ivy's intercepting each of Rosanna's lances of fire, um, far enough short of her body to prevent the bloom of heat as they died from scorching her. Though the 2 more physical Denarians who strained to force their way past the barrier of snapping sparks that formed whenever they tried to get close had far less luck. The Hellmaid's flames scorched them badly. So she's basically got some kind of barrier stopping these two, and she's stopping the fire right where they are and using Rosanna's magic to burn them. It's just freaking amazing. The sixth, wizened little thing that looked like a caricature of a woman carved from a dried tree root, seemed to be holding the end of a rope of liquid shadow that curled like a hungry serpent, darting now and then toward Ivy's head. Ivy faced it down steadily, moving her head calmly in a dodge once, swatting it aside with a little burst of silver energy a second later. But mostly she faced an amused looking Tessa, who apparently just for the fun of it threw another thunderbolt at her now and again. That told me something right there. It told me that Tessa was no punk sorceress. She was White Council material herself. If she could make that much flash and bang while expending that little energy, either that or she'd been able to hold back one whale of a ton more power than I had when she took her deep breath before the battle. Either way, she was a big leaguer, and Ivy's response to the attack confirmed it. Each time the archive turned to fully face Tessa, and each time she dedicated one of her hands entirely to the defensive measure used to stop the incoming spell. I mean, that's some choreography that we're going to have to work out,
Mhm.
but that's some fun detail. So the gas starts to catch up to Dresden. Gravity. So I think they overwhelmed her and he grabs her. I guess I didn't grab enough context for this either, but gravity suggested that I keep on going down, and it seemed like an excellent idea. I staggered down the stairs into the lower level, running past the underwater vistas. So, yeah, I think basically they were able to overwhelm her, and then he grabbed Ivy and ran. And he ran downstairs, which seems like a terrible idea if the gas is heavier than air, which he
Right.
realizes in a moment. So Dresden's just fucking it up left and right for us. So
Yes. As usual.
yeah. So let's see. Past the dolphin tanks, past the cute penguins and the sea otters, the Denarians in pursuit, their sorceries flashing past us while Ivy shielded us. Oh, yeah, he just grabs her to run. And that's, I forgot. It's like, make sure to keep my arms free. It's like, don't got to tell me twice, you know? Um, I felt it when she ran dry and labored to keep my legs moving to keep ahead of the pursuit. Then the ground hit me with an uppercut. Everyone else in the oceanarium suddenly fell sideways. The black rope spell wrapped around Ivy's throat, and dozens of Deirdre's tentacles twined around her or twined around her arms and legs. They jerked her out of my sight. I looked up to find the Denarians standing as a group in the hallway, lit by the eerie blue light coming from the big tanks. Rosanna stared intently at Ivy for a moment before she shuddered and folded her dark bat wings around herself, shivering as if with cold, and turned away from the scene. Her glowing eyes narrowed. She reached into the bag and produced another canister. She offered it to Tessa without being prompted. Tessa took it, twisted something on the nozzle, and gave Ivy a polite smile. Then she quite literally jammed the nozzle into the little girl's mouth and held it there. Ivy panicked and cried out. I saw her kick and twist. She must have bitten her tongue or cut her lip on one of her teeth. Blood ran from her mouth. She bucked and fought uselessly for a few seconds, then went ragdoll limp. Finally, could it have been more annoying? Tessa expelling breath and irritation.
Bad
Damn you.
guy.
Yeah, right. Damn you, I slurred. I shoved myself up to one knee and glared at Tessa. Damn you all, you can't have her. Cliched. Boring. Tessa tapped her chin with one clawed hand. Let me see. Where were we when we were so rudely interrupted? Ah, she stepped closer, smiling cheerily, and lifted my 44. Just then, I felt the snap of magic rushing back into the oceanarium as the enormous symbol collapsed and the circle fell. I took all my frustration and rage and turned it into raw force, screaming "Fozare!" I didn't direct it at Tessa and her crew. I aimed it at the glass wall that was the only thing between all of us and 3 million gallons of seawater. The force of my will and my rage lashed out and shattered the wall into powder. The sea came in with a roar and one enormous impact that felt like the strike of a hammer being applied to every square inch of my body all at once. Then it was cold and black. So, I mean, that was intelligent at least, but.
Meh.
And that was 3 chapters. Go team. We're so good at this.
Oh, man, at this point, Small Favor's going to have like 12 parts.
Yeah, I am definitely concerned, because it's like, I mean, it's not, I don't know if it's going to have 12 parts, but yeah, I'm like, I also feel like the books are getting longer and more detailed and everything, which is great, but it does
Yep.
make them a lot to get through. So,
Yep. And in every more introduction of something that is significant, of which there are more people doing things that in the next few books, it's going to have more of a setup, more of a description, more of an explanation. Everything's going to take longer. The books do get longer.
Yep. Yeah. So that's a challenge, but it was hard even with all of this. It's like, I guess I could outline this more and get into the details less, and we could talk about that. I might try that, but it's been fun pulling out the descriptions and the dialogue and that sort of thing. But then it's just like there's so much. And like the other one is like, next is my one of my first favorites, which is Turncoat. And
you
I'm gonna want to pull all of the dialogue.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what do I do? Like, I mean, at least the dialogue itself isn't usually too much, but yeah, it's like I'm gonna have to figure out ways to shorthand more of the descriptions. And I think part of it is longer too, because it's like Dresden's editorializing while he's describing things. So it's like, well, she's a smoking hot red demoness thing of the classical variety. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we could see that in 3 seconds, right? But it's like he's got to go on about how he could see hundreds of people falling to Rosanna's whims, because she's the classical hot,
Mhm.
succubus look and whatever. So yeah, I might try to do some of that. That might take a little bit more prep, but might shorten the episode some, and make it easier to get through these. So, I mean, here's one for you. If you're listening to this, get in touch with us through
Yeah.
Discord
Do
or
you want us to
X
to
or YouTube and tell us what you would prefer, and we'll do that. If you're like, "Oh
more
my god, these episodes go on
condensed?
so long," who wants to listen to Justin read the book at us? Then we'll change. So, but we're
I
having
do read
fun.
all of the comments that we ever get. Sometimes I even share them with other people, but read them, all of them.
Yeah.
So,
Even if you're on Face page, that gets to us too. So,
yeah, I don't read those ones. That's his job.
yeah, that's my job. So,
Delegate.
yeah. Speaking of which, Andreas, take us out. I guess he did a good job in his tourney, so
I
I presume it was magic. I don't know if we ever got the answer for that, but
Yeah, I don't think he said, but we'll be able to share the results of his whatever Magic the Gathering tournament next time.
and we're doing the strain, right? So
I think so. Yeah,
I've
that's
got
the
like
next
2
thing.
or 3 more episodes to watch. So
Yeah, we'll be like
or
the first season of The Strain next week, and then who knows? There's nothing significant happening this month at all.
yeah, no, yeah, yeah. I
Boring all
mean,
the
it's
way.
either the strain or I go back to telling the director all about the Jem'Hadar and the lore in Star Trek. So because you were actually interested in Star Trek for like
Well,
5 minutes, it was amazing.
this is certainly something of Star Trek I've never heard of before, but like they do also sound like the clones from Star Wars. So it's like,
There's
okay, I can
there's a Venn diagram of which they share some real estate. That was kind of my epiphany this week. Yes. So yeah.
care about Star Trek as far as I need to care to understand at least some of the shit that you say. I don't need to understand everything.
Yeah. But when you start throwing around alien names and you're like Kisatz Haderach and you're like, excuse me, and
Yeah, it's
then you're
like
like, what the hell's the
Gesundheit.
Jem'Hadar? Yeah, exactly.
It's just
Yeah.
gibberish.
Right. Yeah.